For me, the fulfillment comes at the intersection of doing deep, meaningful work with people that I respect and admire. And it's a Japanese concept called Ikigai as well. And then being able to monetize, because you got to feed yourself and keep a roof over your head. And then if there's a philanthropic component to it, a selfless, generous part of it, then you're at the intersection of fulfillment. So it's, yeah.
Well, brother.
Yeah, we're on.
Victor Chan, my dear friend, what a treat it is to be recording this at your studio. That's what a gentleman you are.
Welcome. It's always a pleasure, Lawrence.
So Victor, when someone says, who is Victor Chan? How would you answer that?
These days, I would say husband first, right? Is there value in the order you list things?
That's a good question.
It's so hard because I used to identify with what I do, right? Which is like, what do you do? And but if you ask, who are you? It's a lot more open.
Exactly, because when you do podcasts, especially if you're a guest, someone says they want to either introduce you or they want you to introduce yourself. Tell me a bit about what you do. And so many people just say, I do this, I do that. They talk about titles.
Yeah.
But what about the actual character? I'm someone that's fascinated by curiosity.
I like that.
I'm someone that's motivated to keep learning.
Yeah.
I'm someone that dreams about being a great father one day because I'm newly married.
Well, I think the word that comes to mind is like for to describe that is essence. Right? What is your essence?
Exactly.
I've never probably said this like out loud, so it's like a train of thought right now. But definitely someone who strives to improve on a daily basis, and that in and of itself is a challenge. So improvement, trying to just do good, and that can be within small acts of service. In the people that you meet or for yourself, it's important to be kind to yourself. And then overall living up to your potential.
That is if someone says, what's your life goal? That's exactly what I would say. When all's said and done, and I'm at the end of my life, I want to have fulfilled the majority of my potential. That beautiful quote about hell says, hell is the end of your life. If you meet the person you meet at the end of your life being your potential, and if you're close to that potential, that's great. But hell is when you meet someone that's so much better than you were, and that's what you could have been. And I just love that definition of hell. It's your unfulfilled potential.
Well, how do you know what that is though?
That's the beauty of it, Victor, is you can decide what is really important to you, and then your potential is in that area. So for instance, our mutual friend, Dr. Dave, he's an incredible guy. He's a physician, he's a father, husband, 2 kids, great family man. He's been actively working to do wonderful things in our city, things like the gun victims fund, and then he bought a farm to feed the
food insecurity.
And now he's trying to run for Congress because he realized, like most normal people, if they got that far in life, they would have been happy because he's done more than enough, right? He's fed 500,000 people.
Not that Dr. Dave isn't happy, right?
Yes, exactly. I was saying that they wouldn't. He's driven through more because in his mind he sees his potential as bigger. So I think that's so beautiful, and we get to decide, right? What is our potential? It's
what you make of it. But what I continue thinking about is like if I'm leaving anything on the table. So I guess maybe not having a concrete vision, potentially.
Yes, because if you're so fixed today on what you want to do, hopefully, both of us in 2 years are going to be further evolved, and if we had stuck to a concrete vision, we're not going to see past it.
Yeah. So to add more to your introduction, because to some extent it is important for people to understand like what I do, and it does play a role as to who I am. So my day job is a teacher. I'm an EMT instructor, a paramedic by trade, but I'm not active as a paramedic. I have my license, but I haven't been active since 2018. Last ambulance job was at Cicero's Fire Department, and I was making $13 an hour there, and I couldn't afford to hire a dog walker for my 2 dogs. right? And at the time I was making more money from teaching at a university, and the benefits were great. And the longer you do that, meaning like you step away from the ambulance and you're teaching something, you have this huge feeling of imposter syndrome. And that's when this podcast was born, right? So I'm an educator, I'm a podcaster. Within the last couple of years, I picked up wedding photography. I've always loved photos and cameras, so I've done that for the last 10 years. But in the pandemic, some friends convinced me to start using this as a side revenue, as a business, that people are willing to pay for this. You do good work. So 2 years ago, I started, and then during this podcast journey, I had a wedding photographer on, and time goes by, and she actually was looking for a second shooter for some of her weddings. So, and then outside of that, I work at Northwestern still, right? I'm an anesthesia tech at Northwestern. And so out of all the hats that I wear, I think the common thread, like why I continue to do all these things, is because it provides opportunities for me to meet very interesting people. And for me, I think that's got to be one of the core tenets of where I feel fulfillment from these days. Are the relationships that I get to build through these vessels.
So when we started your podcast, where did you come up with the name, To Be Consciously Curious?
I think curiosity is self-explanatory. To always want to improve, to continue learning, never stop growing. But the consciously, aside from the spiritual aspect, I think I was at that time still seeking and developing this victor identity. And I think I was partially navigating faith and religion and spirituality. But outside of that, being consciously curious means that you have some direction, you have some intention with what you're curious about. Which is why I might tell people no when they ask to come on, because I'm not curious enough yet. I need to defer until I have the right questions. I don't want this to be a shitty episode.
As a fellow podcast host, both of us have podcasts. The hardest thing is when people bug you to be on, and it's not that they're not interesting. It's that for whatever reason, you know, if you have a good friend and he's like, hey, I had a good friend, this happened to me. He said, I really want to talk to you about my youth. And I didn't even know this about him. He had an incredibly hard childhood, and he came out of it, and he's an incredibly funny guy. He used humor to overcome the pain, the hardships of his youth. And that was a cool story. But other people are like, when are we going to do a podcast? And I'm like, well, what do you want to talk about? You got to come to me with something. I'll chat to anybody, but you have to come with me with something. And it always puts us in awkward situations.
It's a good question to ask other podcasters.
How do you deal with it?
What are some things you look for when people ask to come on? Because when you first start out, you're the one asking, right? And then you get to a point where, people do want to come on, but they probably have something maybe to sell. I don't know. And
that's the worst, is people reaching out and they're just trying to sell something.
And I think if we can create win-win situations, that's ideal. But at least for me, it's like if I'm not honest or authentic about the questions that I'm asking, I don't give my guests the questions beforehand, right? So I try to make it as transparent of a conversation. It's a free-flowing conversation, at least on my show. I can't do that if I don't have at least a curiosity about them. So at least what I would say is what I would ask is what would you consider a win by coming on this podcast? And has there been measurable growth? It could be personally, spiritually, or entrepreneurially, whatever it is, why? Has there been growth in you? And I think that's also the questions that you ask are dependent on the type of podcast you host.
Did you know when you started that because you've, not that you're pigeonholed, but your niche tends to be local entrepreneurs, I would say. That's one of the themes. Is that something you wanted to do from the beginning, or is that just something that came up? You realized after, X amount of episodes, I'm obviously interested in this because it keeps coming up with the guests.
I love entrepreneurship. I didn't think about it until we were close to leaving the university to start this EMT program. But the podcast started at a time when I felt that imposter syndrome for teaching this program. And this was my excuse to talk to and chat to individuals from different industries. Right. And that was it. Like, it was for selfish reasons. Like, I wanted a reason to speak to other people.
How much does imposter syndrome come up with people you've talked to? Because for me, it's come up a lot. There's so many people that I look up to in different ways, and I would never have thought they had to deal with it, and they did.
I think everyone goes through it, and it's only through these conversations that you discover how common it is. And at the end of the day, you can't escape the work. You know, if you don't want to feel like an imposter, you gotta do the work.
One thing that I've noticed is, we were just talking before we started recording about Lex Friedman is trying to he wants podcast guests, just everyday people, not these, the Tim Ferriss and these big names with
Jeff
huge
Bezos
followers.
on.
Yeah, exactly, Jeff Bezos. And one thing I've noticed is a lot of the time when you listen to somebody who's very well known, it's kind of the same. You kind of know the reason they're famous. Maybe it's you've heard them on other podcasts. Maybe it's they've written a famous book or whatever it is, and it's not that interesting because your expectations are so high because they have this big name. And some of my favorite podcasts with people I've never heard of, I had no expectations, and I think you get a lot of that where if it's a local entrepreneur, if I listen to you guys talking, I don't have any expectations. I don't know anything about them. It's actually a lot of time more interesting. And one thing that when I started, I had a dream of, I'd love to talk to this guy or that guy. I don't even have that anymore. Like I
think at least I realized, like, what would he talk about? Like, right. If I were to walk across this person on the sidewalk, what more would I say besides, hey, I appreciate your work. I learned a lot.
I'm a big fan.
Let's say it's a Tim Ferriss or a Gary Vaynerchuk or, Jordan Peterson, whoever. It's just like, you've impacted my life. But they've done so many interviews. What more? And this is maybe imposter syndrome. What more can I add to this conversation?
It's almost like those people that a lot of authors talk about this. When they have a bestseller, there's so much pressure from whether it's the publisher or the agent. They want the next book, and maybe it's taken 30 years of them to come up with this amazing idea and then put it down on paper, and then they're expected in a year or two to do a follow up that's even close. And it's like, well, what else is there? How can I come up with a second book that's so fascinating when it's taken me a whole lifetime to get this? And you've only given me 2 years, 3 years.
Right.
That's something I've noticed with you've got to give people time to do great things. Otherwise, it's just rehashing the same old.
Yeah. So I feel lucky in the sense of, Chicago is abundant with small business entrepreneurs, people that have probably had some media exposure, but they, especially at the beginning, there's so much exponential growth at times where, 6 months down the line, you catch them and they've grown so much more again, to where they might have done an interview 6 months ago, but there's still more to share now. Right.
Yes.
So I don't know. I think I take a lot of pride in sharing stories that are usually untold, that are, in my opinion, worth telling. But that's the whole beauty. It's your show. Tell what you want to tell, right? And don't let anyone force their way on, because it's going to be a shitty episode.
Actually, because you said curiosity you said something that's quite common. Actually, it is inbuilt in humanity, right? There's a reason that humans have gone on little boats into Polynesia, and we've populated the most isolated islands all across the Pacific because they had that curiosity. They were going one way on these boats into the. It's so fascinating. But a lot of people today, I don't think they're that curious. And I was looking at the recent craziness at Harvard with the Claudine Gay, I think the president there. I would say she's not curious at all. They're just literally repeating the dogma they're supposed to repeat. And it's these once great institutions that have hundreds of years of such great reputation for learning and curiosity and trying to better yourself have just become breeding grounds for, hey, you've got to follow this or you're going to be, you're not going to make it here. They've become very, 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 very rigid and stuck. Exactly. And I think it's so fascinating to see. I'm sure every generation to an extent felt this way, but I just feel like the times we're living right now are so interesting. And I mean, 2020 is 100%. They're going to be writing about all the failures that we did during COVID in 50 years, in the history books. But even just, next year with the election, it's wild times, Victor. Don't you think?
After we talked about Trump potentially winning, he gets removed from the Colorado court from the
Wild.
ballot.
They're literally trying to change laws. It's wild times, and I think that's what makes me so nervous. Is I was just listening to somebody, I can't remember who it was, a very, very smart person, and he said 2024 could be the year that democracy is tested, because it's not just the U.S. election. There's a lot of major elections in a lot of countries, and it's just really fascinating times. We seem that was what was so refreshing about our mutual friend Dr. Dave, is he was talking about most issues, 85% of issues, both sides agree on, but there's this push to try to get us to fight amongst ourselves on the very, very divisive issues, as opposed to trying to remember that most people agree on most things, and society works a lot better when you remember that, as opposed to trying to find out exactly what divides us and then shove it down everyone's throats to get everyone so riled up.
Well, yeah, with going along the lines of curiosity and being open-minded, I don't know why I don't know if it's hard, but having the willingness to have open dialogue with people that you might initially perceive to be on the opposite end of a viewpoint that you might have. I think with social media these days, you're so far removed from being intimate with each other that you don't feel you don't feel the effects of what you say to the other person. There's no repercussions. So you can say the most outlandish things, the most derogatory things, and you won't even feel the repercussions of it. So it's easy to be a keyboard warrior these days more than ever. How do we cultivate that willingness to take the time to sit with someone across the aisle and have a conversation?
Exactly. The idea of being open-minded, though, is me personally, I always thought I was so open-minded, and I've realized I'm in my 40s now. I've definitely become certain ideas I'm pretty firm on it. It'll be harder for me to change them, but that's one of the best things about these conversations is it's impossible not to get exposed to other people and other ideas.
I mean, it can be through social media. Start following channels that are not within your viewpoint. It could be the books that you read. It could be traveling in and of itself, going to places that you never thought you'd be in.
What is something that you've changed your mind on recently? Anything come to mind?
Probably. I don't know.
I'll give you one. So I can't help, as an immigrant to this country, I can't help being a bit more of the mindset that there's so many opportunities in America. Stop complaining about not having them and just work really hard and you can achieve great things. I always had that mindset. And then I just recorded a podcast with a guy who, JC Armanza, he was just born into real tough, his parents were basically kids. His dad left, so his mom moved with his uncle who was beating him up when he was 3-4 years old, nearly drowned him, just a complete abuse. So he's on the streets as a gang member by 9, running drugs for the cartel by 15, and he's in Mexican jail by 17. And a guy like him, there's just, I don't want to say there's no shot, but there's almost no shot. I can't put myself in his position and say, yeah, I would have done better. I wouldn't have ended up in jail. I just think in those situations, there's just too much inertia towards what happened with him ending up in prison. It's amazing he's come out of it now. So that was one where I'm much less rigid in that mindset, where I know there's a lot of opportunity here, but for a lot of people born into terrible environments,
Dr. Dave yesterday said, how ruthless politics can be, right? And I think before you started recording, I asked him, like, how do you remain faithful and hopeful? And he's like, well, you have faith in yourself, and I can't imagine the monster that he's going up against, right? And it at times it can probably seem impossible. Yeah.
But I think we owe it to ourselves and everyone around. It's so easy to be pessimistic. When I was a kid, I heard Mike Tyson interview when he was in jail, and he said something along the lines of, I'm always pessimistic, and then when good things happen, it's a positive upside. And I was like, in my youthful ignorance, that's a really good philosophy to live my life. And then, of course, a few years later, I realized this is a terrible way to live your life, constantly pessimistic. Because to an extent, when you're optimistic, you tend to attract good things to you. And I think that it's so easy right now with all the division and polarization and problems in this country to focus on that. And you mentioned traveling earlier, as opposed to saying, hey, we still live in America. There's still people from all over the world that was, Francis Ngannou cross the to get out of Africa, to get to Europe, and then to eventually make his way here. Took him something like 7 times getting arrested and rearrested in Africa before he could get to Europe to eventually come here. Like so many people, the dream of America is so strong. And when you go to countries like I've been blessed to go to Venezuela, to go to Cuba, to go to these, I worked in Russia when I was young, to go to these countries and talk to people, and you say, I live in America, they look at you like you've hit the jackpot.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure the expectations are that high for the migrants that are currently here.
And that's such a tricky one because, again, talking about viewpoints, my viewpoint is everything in life is about incentives and trade-offs. So if you're from the position of these are poor people and they come here, they've got nothing, and we have to help them. I understand that mindset. My mindset would be more like, if you're helping them out, you're financially incentivizing more people to come, and it's going to cause decades of problems. Number one, for the people that aren't migrants that are here, they're not getting the support. And then I think about the larger picture, things like, if they say 7 to 9 million people have come here illegally, it's going to cause problems with housing for decades. We don't have the housing. That's going to be housing shortages, rental inflation. But so again, I can see both sides, because it's...
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Dave yesterday mentioned basic human rights. So when you come to America, is it the expectation that you should have a fair opportunity at life? And when they got here, these migrants, I don't know, maybe the opportunity isn't fair, and how they got in, definitely not, obviously the legal way. So, yeah, depending on whose perspective, they're probably cutting the line, right? There probably is a line of immigrants that are waiting for papers.
Right, and I was in that line. It took me nearly 19 years or something to go from first coming here to getting my citizenship. It's a long journey if you do it properly. So again, talking about things that we've changed. Initially, I'm disgusted by people that cut the line because I didn't. But then if I put myself in their situation, if I was in one of these war-torn countries and I could sneak in through the Mexican border with my family, I probably would,
I mean, I wonder can you just expedite the process for everyone? Is there a way to level the playing field?
Yes, and that's why I'm a big fan of Vivek, the Republican candidate, because he talks about that. He talks about incentivizing the people who will make society better to get here easier, because the process is just unbelievably laborious and hard and complicated. And we need certain people here that are going to help society. There's certain job positions that there's shortages and things like that. So if you can streamline the process and incentivize the people that we need here, that there's shortages, that's only going to help. And I know that's one of the platforms he's running.
I am curious. Like, I told a few people, like, if I spoke Spanish, I would have brought some of those migrants on. But I guess I could have had someone who did speak Spanish and moderate for me. But I'm curious, like, what some of these, what any of these migrants, if they had a living, what did they do for a living? Because we all know immigrants that probably now maybe drive a cab or work in a restaurant, but they might have been doctors or engineers in their home country.
So you hear that all the time. So in real estate, there'll be a janitor, and he's come from some war-torn country, and he was a physician, or he had a real, some kind of job like that.
Yeah.
And he comes here, he doesn't speak English very well, and he's stuck taking whatever menial work he can do, but he's actually incredibly qualified back in his home country, but there was just no opportunity there, or there was too much violence for his family.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, how do we vet the people that, have value, right? And that's such a... And I'm not, shitting on capitalism, but that's such a capitalistic way to, what can you do for us? Which is honest. You gotta find that out, right? Are you gonna produce, or are you gonna consume, right? And maybe you can do both, but.
Well, so my son has the same name as you, Victor, and one of the reasons it was Viktor Frankl. That was one of my heroes, and so he survived the Nazi concentration camps. And then he was a therapist, and when he came out, he wrote some incredible books, and one of them is Man's Search for Meaning. And in that, he says, the United States has the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast, and it should be balanced out with the Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. Because if you have a country, the more a country offers, whether it's free healthcare, some kind of housing subsidy, whatever, the more you offer, if you don't have some kind of, tight borders or something, more and more people are going to come, and then the whole system breaks because financially someone has to pay for it. So I really like that approach of, I think that was maybe a JFK quote, is one of the old presidents said, you should be asking what you can do for your country, not what your country can do for you. And I think that right now it's too much about what can I get as opposed to what can I give.
Yeah, it's such a tricky situation because some people are not even treading water. Some people feel like they're drowning before they can think about what to contribute, right? Which goes back to basic human rights. Yeah, and there's always going to be that debate between what are we doing for the homeless versus what are we doing for the migrants. And I can't imagine, as much as we shit on the mayor, it's just like I can't imagine how hard that that position is.
It's an impossible job. You're right. Yeah, it's very easy to criticize, but like unless you're someone like Dr. Dave who's doing so much and then he's still taking the time to run for office,
right? Like before him, I would have never thought to think about combating gun violence through a burial fund. Right? It's more so like, a gun buyback program, or let's keep these repeat offenders in jail. Why are you releasing Kim Fox? Like you hear that more often than what Dr. Dave is accomplishing. I don't know, and maybe like stick to what what you're good at. And he had people that approached him personally for a donation, and he funded these personally until he wanted to scale.
But that's a good example of, in order for you to help the most amount of people, you have to first get yourself in a good position. So obviously he had already got his medical license, he had his practice. Yeah. He obviously had some kind of money because he could help that person, and then that went on to achieve great things. So
it's that dance. I mean, I asked this of the neurosurgeon recently, Dr. Sherry Dewan. How do you juggle taking care of your family, as well as charity, and wanting to give free neurosurgeries to people in India. They did it in South India, and she said people would travel across the country to go see her. She's only there for 2 weeks.
It's incredible. Yeah, it is incredible.
It puts things in perspective.
I used to think you had to get everything perfect for you, and then you could help others. And now I realize that that's way too late. Tomorrow's not promised. You have to at least get yourself in semi-good position.
Yeah.
Then you can look to kind of how you can. I think the most fulfillment you're going to get as a human is that balance of getting good things for you selfishly and then selflessly giving. And it's almost like the ideal friends group. You're going to have a couple of people that are kind of struggling that you're trying to help them. You're going to have a couple of people that are doing well, like you and your peers, and then you want to have a couple of people that are where you want to be. They're your mentors, they're your ideal. Yeah. But you have to have all three in order to have a real balanced, successful life, right?
Yeah. For me, the fulfillment comes at the intersection of doing deep, meaningful work with people that I respect and admire. And it's a Japanese concept called Ikigai as well. And then being able to monetize, because you got to feed yourself and keep a roof over your head. And then if there's a philanthropic component to it, a selfless, generous part of it, then you're at the intersection of fulfillment. So it's, yeah.
What is Ikigai?
So Ikigai is a Japanese term. It's a large Venn diagram. I'm sure you've seen it before. It's a common way to identify your potential dream career or profession. And it's identifying what you're good at, what you enjoy, how to monetize, and how to give back.
That's so fascinating. There's have you heard of Martin Seligman?
Probably. I don't know. I can't put a face.
He's a positive psychologist. So he was one of the people that started the movement of positive psychology. And he wrote a book called Authentic Happiness, I think in the 90s or maybe early 2000s. And his whole thing was, instead of psychology to be getting people from below average to average, I want to help people go from average to flourishing. And he wrote this book, and my brother actually gave it to me, and I read it in 2004, I think. And it changed my life because he said, number one, you have to do, there's a quiz and it's called the signature strengths test. So you want to find out what are your signature strengths, and then you want to try to figure out your occupation or maybe even just a side hustle or whatever it is that utilizes much of those signature strengths. And then if you can, just like you said, if you can add a component of charity, altruism, giving back, if you can do all those, that's a good life. And it was so interesting because I wanted to talk about this. It was so fascinating. I took this test in 2004, and I think there's 24 categories. My number 1 was perseverance. My number 2 was curiosity. Number 3, perspective, and then love of learning and self-control. And I took it 20 years later, or nearly 2023, and they were completely different. And I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. Number 1, Victor, was love. And I was like, geez, I've become
because you're a dad?
A softy, hippie. Yeah, I don't know. But the only one that was the same was perseverance. And then it was like hope, social intelligence. Honestly, I'm like, this is so crazy. So according to this test, I'm a completely different person to when I was 24.
Which is good. People change, right? People change, and I think it's contextual. It's contextual to where you're at in life, for what you do, who you're with, who your partner is. If you have kids, like it'll reframes things. I mean, I remember one of my best friends, like, and many parents say this, just like you have newfound purpose in your life when you're a new parent, right? So it's amazing, and it's okay. Be open to change.
That's true. No, it was good, because if I was exactly the same person as I was 20 years ago, that would be a little depressing. If we want to be growing. But what you said about you changed because economically you're getting paid $13 an hour.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. I think there's 2 approaches to money, or 2 wrong approaches to money. One is, I don't want to work for money. I don't want to be a slave to money. And those people tend to be always broke, in debt, and they don't really have any money. And the other approach that's also wrong is, I'm going to give up everything for the pursuit of money. My health, my time, my happiness, my pleasure, just everything for the pursuit of money. And I think obviously the truth is somewhere in the middle. Not the truth, the best approach, somewhere in the middle. But I think if you don't have a certain amount of, money is an amplifier. And if you're a miserable person who's broke, you're probably going to be a miserable person who's wealthy, right? But it
amplifies.
Yes. But if you use money wisely, you can buy back your time. You don't have to do jobs you hate or things you hate, tasks you hate. You can outsource, and you can do great things. Like we'll keep talking about this Dr. Dave, because we both did a recent episode with him. He's a wonderful example of, you can do amazing things, but he also has some, economic power to do them. Whereas a broke idealist who's in their 20s and they don't have any money or assets, they can have all the ideals in the world, but if they don't have the economics to do it, there's no chance.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And to be honest, I'm probably on the unhealthy spectrum of money, in the sense of, like, I have a bad habit of elevating my lifestyle. And maybe going to dinner more often than I should, or eating out more than I should, or I just bought a new car. I don't know, just like, I'm not, I do have goals of, like, buying a building, hopefully through you. But I have to, I need discipline, right? And that's something I'm personally working on. Got a new financial advisor, all that stuff. So, like, it's a goal of mine to get it in check.
Well, let's talk about that, because there's a great book called Die with Zero. Have you heard of it?
No,
it's by I'm blanking on the author, but it's the theme is, when you're young, you tend to have no money, but you have health and you have energy. And then when you're at the end of your life, you tend to be the wealthiest you're ever going to be, but you obviously have no time. So you're at the end of your life, and you have no health, because again, you're at the end of your life. So if you can, during that process, if you can kind of front load all the things that cost money as you're going. So you don't want to sacrifice your youth when you have the energy and the time to be old and wealthy, right? To be having the Ferrari when you're 80. It's not really much fun. So my friend bought it for me, and he said, Lawrence, you should have written this book, because you've always done really well. I've made a lot of money in my life, and I don't have much in my bank, because I'm enjoying life. And I wish I'd been a bit more responsible too. That's one of my goals for 2024, is be a bit more financially responsible. But I love that approach. So don't be hard on yourself, because you said you've been doing that too. But at the same time, Victor, what is some of the things you're thinking about doing, like implementing? You said discipline, in order to increase your net worth.
I've been trying to, as far as, like, so there's generating revenue, and then there's cutting costs.
Yes.
Right. So as far as cutting costs, I've been trying to eat more leftovers. Justine hates me for it, for not eating leftovers. So if she's listening, like I'm trying, and so it's cutting costs that way through not eating out as much. And it doesn't seem like much, like $9-10 here for like a sandwich, but it adds up. So it's that, and then being creative about generating revenue in other ways. Aside from wedding photography, I'm going to start exploring creating opportunities for people to video record and document video messages or conversations with their loved ones. We recently had a friend whose dad passed away from cancer, and I can't imagine how much they might have valued a last recorded conversation that they could share with maybe their kids one day. Or at our wedding, we had our videographers convert the bridal suite into a video podcast space. And we got 40 minutes worth of our guests coming on and just giving love and wisdom and memories all in a video format.
That's beautiful.
40 minutes worth of that. And I would love to do that for other people's weddings or, relationships with their loved ones or whoever. And anyone can do this. You don't have to hire me to do this. Do it on your phone. Record a conversation on your phone. But what I was going to get at earlier is if someone, didn't know what their purpose was or what they're good at, Kevin Kelly, I found him through Tim Ferriss, says, don't strive to be the best, strive to be the only. Because when you strive to be the best, there's a lot of people also striving to be the best in especially that one category. But by trying to be the only, that's accomplished by stacking certain skills. So maybe my knowledge of healthcare or my ability to help people feel vulnerable through podcasting has lent me to be successful as a wedding photographer. My knowledge of cameras has lent me to further shoots, and these photo shoots can be branding shoots, personal shoots, wedding photography. And you start stacking things that you're good at to become the only person that does that. So you automatically, it's easier to become the best because you're the only.
I love that. I've got a similar philosophy, and it's the kind of the James Bond ideal. And James Bond might not be the best fighter, but he's a damn good fighter for a regular person. And he might not be the best, he might not be the smoothest guy in the world, but he's pretty damn smooth. And he might not be the most intelligent, he's not a scientist, but he's smart enough to figure things out. So like I try and look at an overview of the whole. And so if you're competing against pure entrepreneurs, you might not be the top entrepreneur, but you can be the top entrepreneur that's focusing on really looking after your health. And on top of that, you might be the happiest entrepreneur who's also healthy, because a lot of very successful people are not happy because they're so driven. They never take a second to pause. So kind of similar theme, but I love that.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to discipline, I've definitely neglected my health as far as not going to the gym.
Well, Victor, if there's one thing you've got to get out of this, it's got to work on that.
I know. And I saw a post today by Tim Kennedy, who are you familiar?
Yes.
So, and he has this kids school, this elementary school where they get to navigate complex, discussions and concepts collectively. So it's not school in the traditional sense. They're not taught certain lessons. It's kind of like an open, it's a little hippie-ish in that sense, but like it's they learn how to be human beings and explore complex situations. So the specific post with Tim Kennedy is like, to be prepared. You can be physically fit. You can be good with a gun. You can be good with jujitsu. But if you're not healthy, none of these, that's the foundation of everything, right? Like if I'm not healthy, I can't continue to teach this class. I can't host this podcast. I can't. So at the core of it, I think I have to get back on that.
I mean, I always think the best when you're trying to think about what's important, what's really important in your life, what do you want to do today? that your 60-year-old self will be really thankful.
Yeah.
And of course, yeah, maybe he'd want you to be a little bit more financially savvy and save a bit more money. But I think by far, the only thing he's going to want is you to really look after your health. Because I'm a bit older than you, and I'm at that age now in my mid-40s where I've got so many people in their 40s where the wheels are falling off. And I'm like, man, that is so young. You know, my dad's in his mid-70s and he's still going pretty strong. And that's the ideal, right? So I think just trying to build in your day where I've got to the stage where if I go to bed at night and the only thing I did that was productive, I guess you'd say, from that day is get some exercise, I'm happy. But if I'm productive in a business sense, I record 2 podcasts, I make 50 work calls, I write a few contracts, but I'm just a kind of a slob physically, I don't feel good when I go to bed. So I've made that my one non-negotiable.
So it's a matter of priorities, right? So because I feel after each one of these episodes, I feel high.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm mentally drained. So I go home, I'm like, I'm a slob. I'm just like, I'm not doing anything. I'm a vegetable.
But also, not just your future self, but in order to be the most, the sharpest, right? I think that we evolved to move. And life has become so easy for most people in the West where we're just so sedentary. Yeah. You know, it's not helping.
I agree. And it's just, I think the hardest part is getting there. It's just, and Lawrence, I've been paying for this gym membership since the beginning. And, to be honest, it's like a 10-minute walk and I just don't go. I got a kettlebell in my condo. Like, I just don't even swing it. It's just like, come on.
Well, let's change that, brother.
I'm trying.
I'm going to be texting you to give me some inspiration. But the idea that the money thing is so interesting because you mentioned, you know, I'm saving $10 here on food a day.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, if you set up on Coinbase, they have that awesome thing where you can buy $10 of Bitcoin a day. Or something. You try and set up whatever it is, Bitcoin, stocks, whatever it is. Try and make it automated and try and set the percentage you want to invest ahead of time because otherwise it's too easy with human nature. To make excuses like I'll invest tomorrow, I'll work out tomorrow.
Yeah.
So by making it, whether it's a daily thing, a weekly thing, a monthly thing, they have now these systems. They make it so easy for you to invest a certain amount. And then there's nothing better than, you know, you're not just the power of compounding because it's structured and it's regular on a schedule, but also I don't see a future in which any tangible asset, and I'm a bit of a pro crypto person. So
still?
So I think Bitcoin I would consider an asset. Bitcoin, gold, silver, real estate, precious jewelry, precious art. I think all of it is going to go up in terms of, it's going to look like it goes up because it's valued in dollars. Because I think the real purchasing power of the dollar is going to, it's the last 50 years has gone down a lot. And I don't see that trend changing because there's too much political pressure to always, one of my biggest pet peeves about politicians is they're spending our unborn grandchildren's money.
Yeah.
And I just don't see that changing. There's just too much political pressure. So in order for anyone listening to guard against that is to try to be disciplined with putting some of your, whatever percentage you're comfortable with, but try to put some percentage in something.
Yeah. That's definitely our 5 to 10 year goal right now. Specifically real estate.
And the idea of, you said there was 2 things, right? You can either cut costs so you can make more money. I was always of the impression that I don't want to cut too many costs because it's going to make life kind of miserable. So then the emphasis is on trying to make more money and figure out those side hustles.
Yeah, we're happy, right? We're happy with where we're at. We get to enjoy life and we value, you know, the nights out and the food that we get to eat.
Because Victor, I don't think if you, the other thing is, you sacrifice all these things that make you happy for 10 years. And at the end of it, you have this huge amount of money, this wealth. Is that worth it? You're never going to get your 30s back. There's such a great decade, you know?
Right. Speaking of decades, do the decades get better?
So statistically, everyone says that people in their 50s and 60s tend to be happier. And I think the biggest thing, so I'm turning 45 in a few months. And as a former professional fighter and a lifelong athlete, I'm depressed at the loss of my, you know, explosive energy and just physical capabilities, I guess.
Yeah.
But the one thing that's really changed me, Victor, it was beautiful, it happened in the summer, is I realized that for my whole life, I was chasing certain accomplishments to be happy. And if I had this thought, I was like, I'm 44. If I wrote down every dream that I could possibly imagine for 20 years to achieve, on a bit of paper, the most wild, huge goals. And I waited till I was 64. And even the best case scenario, I've achieved every single one of them. It's too late. I can't wait to be happy. So we're always, it doesn't matter if you're type A personality or you're very chill. We all have goals and dreams. And if you wait to achieve them, if you wait to be happy till you achieve them, it's just too late. And I realized
that's the trick to life. What if you just get too happy and you don't feel like achieving anything? Isn't that tricky?
So no, because I think I'm very driven. I still have a lot of goals, but I'm determined to be happy now and to really enjoy the process.
Right.
And there was a Conor McGregor quote where he talked about when he fought for the interim title, there was so much stress and pressure and it was a tough fight. He ended up winning and he didn't really remember or appreciate any of it. And then when he beat Jose Aldo in a 9-second knockout that made him so famous and he won the proper title, the whole process he really enjoyed. And he's like, I want to enjoy this. And I had 25 amateur boxing fights, 10 pro MMA fights. I didn't enjoy any single one of them until the very last one because I knew it was the last time. And I said, I'm going to retire after this and I'm going to enjoy the process. And it was night and day. It was such a difference, just the same action, but a different mindset. And I enjoyed the whole process.
Did that make you want to do it more then?
No, because I could have retired the fight. The whole thing, like, you're constantly curious. And with fighting, I was always fulfilling my potential. And I thought even win or lose, I had fights where I'm like, I'm at 40% of my potential. I'm so much better than this. And I always felt like that. I could never perform to my potential. And then I had a fight, the penultimate one, where I felt like I did it. I performed to 90% of my potential. I was I'm good. Plus I was 35.
So when you said you were reaching 40, what do you think was the bottleneck? Like what was locked up?
I think I had too much anxiety. I had too much explosive energy and I just wanted to just go crazy instead of you have to be a bit calmer. And I think that the last few, also I think that, I probably way overtrained in the gym. There's a few different factors. A lot of them, the early ones, my skill probably wasn't good enough.
I saw a post. I can't pronounce his first name. Danaher?
Oh, John Danaher. Yes.
John Danaher. Today's post was about how the jiu-jitsu game changes as you get older, right? It goes from explosive to trying to have limit your opponent's movement.
Yes, and because you have to work with what you've got, and there's some of the students that I trained, the female students who are 110 pounds, half of the things that I might do won't even work because they're always outweighed by a certain amount of weight, and unless they're competing. If they're competing, they should be the same weight. But you have to find what works for you, and it's a completely different game when you're young and explosive to when you're in your 40s. And actually, the older I get, this is something you never appreciate. The youth is wasted on the young, right? You never appreciate that youthful energy in combat until you're older and you don't have it anymore. And now I have so much respect for a 52-year-old attorney who comes in the gym and his body is, his physical capabilities are so much less than maybe when he was 25, but he's adapted his game to work with these limitations, and he's actually really friggin' good. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
But in order to answer that question about being happy, I think as you get older, you realize, there's that lovely quote, when you're young, you worry about what people are thinking about you, and then as you get older, you realize they're not thinking about you. And I think number one, you realize what you enjoy and you just try and do more of it in your life.
Yeah.
And you know yourself more and you care less about what other people think. So I think there's definitely some happiness that goes with that
true.
too. Yeah. But economically, there's definitely, I think there's different ways to live your life. And I think this is kind of a contradiction to the Die with Zero philosophy is try to almost front load the fun, because as you get older, even if you have the same career, most people, they get promotions in the same industry and their income goes up, or they're an entrepreneur and they may start off with nothing and then their wealth is slowly increasing over time. So you're assuming that your wealth is going to go up, so you're kind of front loading the fun. The other way to do it is to work really hard when you're young, make smart decisions, and then you can enjoy your life more as you get older. And I think so that could be another reason for happiness is a lot of people are sacrificing today in a sense for tomorrow, and they've got that
there's
approach.
merit to delayed gratification. There is, and I think everyone's on their own individual journey, and I think different industries require different journeys.
Well, let me ask you this, Victor. You've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs. How many of them do you think are happy?
Majority of them seem happy. To be honest, I don't. If I pick up on some level of unhappiness, which we all go through waves of depression, but I don't know if I would have asked them to come on.
That's true. Yeah, because you're going to be attracted to
or if
people
they were willing to share. I don't know.
with a positive mindset. Yeah. Because I've just noticed that a lot of high achievers, I don't think they're particularly happy. I mean, they might have happiness in what they're doing.
I think the word you're looking for is satisfaction. Are they not? They're not satisfied. They want more.
Yes, exactly. Because once, like you said, once you have the satisfaction, you kind of lose a bit more of that, the desire to keep pushing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the secrets to life is you're not where you want to be because we all have goals and dreams, but you're happy and you're content because you know that the things you do on a daily basis are taking you further along the goal to get to where you want to be. So right now, I'm so far from where I want to be in so many different areas of my life, but I know I'm doing the daily habits that is moving me closer to getting there.
The other thing that scares me is not knowing what you don't know. Not knowing what you don't know. I am working my next episode. I've released one today. So next week, this guy uses he has a nonprofit. He came on to share about his nonprofit. He donates pizza to the homeless. And I don't know if he might listen to this, but we went to lunch and I wanted to take him to a brewery. They were closed. So he's like, fuck it, let's go to Gibson's. I'm always down. I'm down to clown. Let's go to Gibson's. And we walk in, or before we go, actually, he's like, oh, I told him about how I brought cigars to my wedding and stuff. And he's like, you like cigars? Let's go try some cigars. So before we go to Gibson's, he stops at this cold storage facility to pick up a couple cigars. And he's like, here's a Cuban. I'm like, what? And we go to Gibson's. It seems like he knows everyone there. He's kissing waitresses and hosts on the cheek and stuff like that. And he's very, very charming and charismatic. And then he ends up, without giving me a chance to pay, I went to the bathroom. He paid for the lunch. I'm like, why are you paying for lunch? He's like, I'm taking care of you. And then at lunch, he's like, I'm selling you $500 right now. I don't know if he cared if I said that, but I don't care. So he became the first sponsor. That's how I got my first sponsor. And then afterwards, we go across the street to a private cigar lounge. And then there are people that are in there that value the exclusivity and the anonymity that comes from that private club. And I used to work at a private golf club. I understood that there are levels to life. But the conversations that are being had in places like these is conversations I was never privy to.
Can you give an example?
Well, it's just business. Right? Mm-hmm. Deals are going down at these places, and they don't allow cell phones and recordings or anything like that. And you got to pay a certain amount of money to get a locker in there. And it wakes you up to, if this is something that you're interested in, like you said, like money can amplify what you're trying to accomplish in the positive and negative way. And I think it re-sparked some like motivation in me to keep pursuing money. And some people have this negative relationship with money. It's not inherently evil. It's an amplifier.
Well, have you read any of Ayn Rand's work?
No, they're they're intimidating.
They're intimidating. So I've talked about it on different podcasts, but it's been a while since I've mentioned it. Her book, The Fountainhead, it changed my life. And I used to be on the trading floor and I worked for a trading company and I made them insane amounts of money and I got just a fraction of it. But I was a young guy and I didn't have the confidence to even think about, quitting and going off on my own. And when you're on the trading floor and you work for a company, you don't need the trading floor. You might run to pee real quick, but you're there because it can be dead and people are just chatting and reading the newspapers for an hour. And then one order will come in and it'll be the best order of the week. So if you miss it, you have to be physically in the pit. So the guys would just be talking shit and reading newspapers and I'd always be reading books. And my boss, I'd never even heard of Ayn Rand at the time. My boss said to me, have you read The Fountainhead? And I said, no. And then the next couple of days later, he walks in, he's like, here. He was a real prick, but that was such a gift by giving me that book because I read it and it completely changed my life because it gave me the motivation to leave and set up my own trading company, which gave me the wealth to take a sabbatical to follow my fighting dream. So I can say if looking back, that gift of that book really changed my life for the better. And one thing, Ayn Rand's story is so interesting because she came after the First World War. She came to, when the Bolsheviks took over Russia, her family sent her to America. And so she was one of these, talking about these immigrants that have this American dream. She just saw the opportunity in America, and she was so passionate about it. And she saw the value of money. And the way she describes it is, money offers, like if you're a trader and you're a carpenter and you make a beautiful table, it's like the best of you, and you're going to get paid for that work.
Yeah.
So she saw it as a token of the best of us. And I just love that's kind of the approach that I have to money. It's the world runs on money, and people get caught up in it. And it's so weird. I remember when I was trading, and they had a crazy week, my company, and they made like $1 million or something. And they were just having these, you don't even see it, because it's just, my boss even had a meeting at the time, and he said, I'm 22 years old. I don't know what's going on. And he's like, guys, I know it's just a bunch of zeros on paper, but this is real money. We're making career ending money. And of course, I didn't get any of it. I was a new trader. I didn't know what was going on. But so it's so weird, because right now, money a lot of the time is just zeros on a digital ledger in a bank account. But money, if used wisely, it really can change the world. If you know how to use it.
Right. How many lottery winners? What do they usually do? You hear horror stories of them just wasting the money.
That's a great point, Victor. It's because they haven't grown with the money. So someone like Elon Musk, it's taken him years and years of hard work to achieve this crazy wealth. And if you just get given it without doing the work, it's going to take a lot of character to know what to do with it. And a lot of those guys are super depressed, because they have, everyone comes out of the woodwork, their family members, everyone wanting money. They haven't grown with it, so that they're completely lost with it. But I don't think, if you use it well, I'm really passionate about spreading the message that chasing money for the right reasons is not a bad thing.
No, I don't think so. And if along the way you can do work that fills your cup and you really enjoy, and you get to share it with a world that needs it, that you're the trifecta. You're doing solid work.
But like that like you were saying, you were privy to those conversations, and it was kind of inspiring. I think that phrase, we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, it's really true. If you're around people that have no respect for money, no goals to make money, their conversations are about, the game last night and, drinking on Saturday night. That's going to be very different to if you're around the people that sounds like you were, where they're talking about opportunities, like, oh, I can do this, I can grow with that, I can create this. And I think if you can create money from win-win scenarios, as opposed to, like, a lot of people associate wealth, and this happened in 2007 with the banking crisis. There was this theme in the air, and it was true. These bankers had taken these, $100 million bonuses to run these banks in the ground they were making money through what I would call nefarious means, right? But if you can create money, like if, we both have iPhones, Steve Jobs, before he passed away, he revolutionized an industry, and he made incredible products, and he became insanely wealthy through making those products. So that for me is a win-win. If you can create wealth, like for me in real estate, I don't think I ever create wealth through nefarious means. I'm helping people achieve their goals, whatever it is, in real estate, and I get compensated for that. So I think if you can make it a win-win and get compensated for the best of your work, and just being around people who use money well, I think is one of the best things a young person can do. To get it, we all have different mentors, whether it's implicit or explicit. So I could say, I've never met Tim Ferriss, he doesn't know who I am, but I could say he's a mentor because I listen to a lot of his podcasts.
Yeah.
And so if you can find people that use money well, I think that's one of the best things any young person could do. Just having a good, anyone, not even young, middle-aged, having a good relationship with money.
Yeah, it's a good, yeah. And at that lounge, there were people our age, like mid to late 30s, early 40s, and they're there on a Tuesday afternoon. I'm like, you're here just smoking a cigar, just enjoying life. That's freaking awesome.
Well, I think that's one thing both of us have, Victor, is we both work hard, but we both have, to an extent, pretty flexible schedules. And when I'm looking at, I would definitely take less money and more flexibility any day of the week. So I think it's just so important. Yeah,
I had a buddy who was trying to get into real estate. And I remember, I think you were the one that told me this on our episode a while ago now, but it, depending on your situation, if you're getting into real estate, you have to be someone that has more time. Because then you can quickly, learn from a mentor and, offload some of the things that they can't do because they don't have time.
Yes.
but depending on your situation, like this person, he has like 2 kids and he's, got a family and his own day job, and just like, and you're probably not getting paid as someone who's running around helping out a real estate agent. So it's like, you got to be young and hungry and have time on your side, right? So it's particular.
And that's that die with zero philosophy is any industry.
Yeah.
If you can find people that are doing really well in the industry, it's most likely that they're most likely going to be older or have less time than you. So if you can somehow offer a situation where they can give you some kind of mentorship and you can learn from them and you're going to help them out. Like if I had someone that said to me, listen, I really want to learn everything about real estate. I'm going to do all these, I'll pick up your dry cleaning. I'm going to run and grab these keys from these people and just all this kind of menial work. I would be so grateful because you're freeing up my time. So I would give you as much knowledge as I could give. And I think most people are like that, where you've got to, I think they're so, unless you're insanely busy. And even if someone comes to you with that kind of approach where I can try and help you out with some of your day-to-day things in exchange for knowledge, most people would take that. And that's another example of creating these win-win scenarios. So the more win-win scenarios we can create in life, the better for everybody.
I asked the same question to the neurosurgeon, and she says that some of these people that are asking for observational hours, can I shadow you during a surgery? They actually, some of them offer, I'll help you write your research papers, because she doesn't have the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Isn't that crazy?
Win-win, exactly. Win-win.
That's beautiful. What are some of the things you think that there's certain themes that must come up with entrepreneurs you talk to? What are some of the themes that keep coming up again and again?
Perseverance, not allowing a no to stop you, not someone saying no to you. That neurosurgeon, she was met with a program director while looking for residency programs, and that program director invited her into the office, said, you have a great resume, great experience. They actually were in the same surgery together that she got to shadow, but outright said, this specialty of neurosurgery is for white males. She was like jaw to the floor and was like, oh, what do I even say to this? And he's like, there's the door. And, I didn't ask her in the episode, but she saw him at a conference later on when she's a board certified neurosurgeon now. I in a previous episode with another podcast, she said she's going to try to ship him a book. In addition to perseverance, I think, you're going to love this kid. This kid is only 23 years old. He freaking ordered some generic car cleaning soap and filled blank bottles, created his own private label. He's trying to create a polish for golf clubs. And he wanted to create a proof of concept to see if there was a demand. He couldn't find one, so he created one. And he actually put this product of car wash cleaner in his own golf club branded thing, on Amazon. People bought it. It sold out. Wow. Shitty reviews. They're like, this doesn't work. But it gave him the proof that this could work.
If he gets the right product.
And you would think the hardest thing is like, well, how do you come up with that product? He Google searched chemical manufacturers, went through 20 no's, got a yes, had 6 iterations. They perfected the formula. And then great reviews, right? Great reviews. So it's not asking for permission, but potentially asking for forgiveness afterwards, right?
But look at that example, Victor. A few things when hearing you say that, a few things that come to mind. Firstly, there's so much information out there with Google.
Yeah.
Just go out there and YouTube and all that stuff. Just spend a bit of time and you can learn so much. And listen to podcasts.
I'm sure you get it all. You get it all the time. I get it for the EMT class. Since my office phone, I don't have a physical phone. So all the calls get forwarded here. And I want to take all of them, because if I miss their call and I call back, it's my cell phone that's ringing. It's that calls that, right? I don't want anyone to know my cell phone. So I pick up, and a lot of these phone calls are the most easiest questions that a Google search, or like, oh, let's look up their website. Like, how much does the class cost? When is the next class? Things that I've tried to make so easy to find on the website. Where is it? It's just like, are you kidding me? Like,
but Victor, that's a great, I've been thinking about how weird the world is going to be by the time my son is, 18, 20, and he's trying to figure out what he's going to do. So that's going to be, he's 3. So that's going to be, 14, 15 years. And the thing I keep coming back to is there's so much laziness in life, and that's the perfect example, that you don't even have to be special to be successful anymore. You just have to be okay. You have to just have basic common sense, do a little bit of research, spend a little bit of time. You don't have to be completely polished, finished product.
It's not about talent.
Yes.
It's not about talent. It's about discipline, consistency, and the desire to get it.
But back to that that story you were just saying. Think about how niche it is. I'm not a golfer, but a product to clean golf clubs, that's such a great idea because it's so niche. And I think there's so many, whatever your passion is, there's so many wonderful ideas out there. I've got a friend who knows a lot about watches. He makes a fortune just buying and selling watches because that's his niche. I've got another friend in England who was making a fortune. He's got a little bit of money now. He's a bit older, but buying and selling Porsches because that's his thing. He knows which one's overvalued, which one's undervalued. So but he's also he's a car fanatic since he was 6 years old. So he's found his passion, something he's really passionate about, and then he's got so much knowledge about it, and he can make money out of it.
The intersection, it's like a younger you in a way, but like this guy, he's probably in his late 20s. I don't even think he's 30s yet, but he's in Gilbert, Arizona. And I started following him when he was teaching me. I think I told you this when we were at Thanksgiving, but like he created an online course about trading stocks.
Yes.
And telling you focus on more of the percentage that you're making and don't get tunnel vision on the numbers that I'm trading with. But outside of that, he's created so many streams of revenue, whether it's like he does car giveaways these days. He gave away a BMW M4 recently. But in order to qualify, you have to buy these tickets through buying merch. So he has a merchandise store. He also flips houses, right? And then he also flips cars. And in Gilbert, Arizona, I'm sure the weather is relatively nice. You can buy a car, keep it outside, drive it if you want, right? And then sell it. And a lot of sports cars appreciate in value, right? So he's got so many streams of income.
So and you're kind of at that level where you have several different things you do that make money. I think one of the keys with wealth is you want to keep adding to your streams, because one of the big mistakes I made when I left trading is I assumed when I was done fighting and having a good time traveling the world as a young guy, I was just going to walk back in my spot in the trading pit and keep making money. And I didn't realize that the years I was away, the high frequency model came and my model was no longer profitable. There was no small teams of pit traders anymore that were making money. So it doesn't matter how good one revenue stream is, especially now, things are moving so quickly, it can always dry up. So the key has to be multiple revenue streams. And that's one of the reasons that obviously in my career, I'm helping a lot of people add the revenue stream of real estate to their existing revenue streams. But there is a statistic. Most millionaires have an average of 7 different revenue streams. Wow. So that's great for anyone listening. If you have your job, and that's I think that's the Gary Vee philosophy, right? Is you always have time to try to set up some kind of side hustle.
Yeah. The guy you met on the way out, he grew up doing theater, but these days he came on because he hosts role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons at various restaurants and bars and cafes around the city. And he saw an opportunity. He's essentially coordinating games because it takes someone knowledgeable with creating a story. And if there were 4 people out here narrating the adventure for us, right? And in order to set that up, he had a day job that allowed him the flexibility to plan this side hustle. And similar to me, the upside to having a boss that doesn't care about you, doesn't care about what you do, is they're not really looking out for you. They're not looking for you. You could be gone as long as the work is done. Yes. So I had the time to whether set up this business or podcast, like whatever it is, like I had the time to think about other things. I was fortunate. And not everyone's in that fortunate position to plan because their attention is taken by their day job. Right. And it's tough, especially if your day job is 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And you're like, it's a job that requires your attention. You're probably done by the end of the day.
I will say this though, Victor, there's so much good content online and Netflix is just one of the channels, but just on Netflix alone, I would imagine most people listening to this could definitely cut out some pleasure sitting on the sofa watching shows.
That's me.
And but listen, there's nothing better than watching a show after a hard day, right? When you've done the things you want to do because you've earned it. Whereas if you rolled out of bed tomorrow and you didn't have any appointments and you watched 12 hours of back-to-back shows, you're going to feel absolutely shitty by the end of the day, right? There's something, it's not additive. Whereas if you watch an hour or two after an incredibly long, productive, hard day, that's earned, you know? So I think that the idea of trying to figure out a way to get a little side hustle, this is, we're talking now about trying to grow wealth, right?
Yeah.
That's the best advice, I really think, is try to figure out going back to your, is it Ikigai? Ikigai, trying to figure out what you enjoy doing so it's not a complete chore, because life shouldn't be about just chores. What you enjoy doing, what you have some talent of, and how you could somehow monetize it.
Yeah, and if you can give it, if that is like philanthropic in some way.
Yes. Yeah. But if it's not, you can do it just to get another revenue stream. Then eventually that's going to buy back your time.
It could be completely separate.
And then it could free up. Yeah.
Similar to things like some people have a day job that is so lucrative, but they hate.
Yes. And that's tough. The golden handcuffs.
They hate. Well, at least find a hobby that you enjoy. It doesn't have to make money, right? But otherwise your cup is empty, you know?
And that's one thing with podcasting is so many people want to start a podcast because they heard that Joe Rogan just got his $60 million Spotify
Those
deal.
contracts aren't happening anymore.
But not just that. But if I got nothing out of doing a podcast other than not looking at having any distractions, so like looking at my cell phone, I'm not talking to people.
It's a little respite.
It is, and it's impossible to have conversations with people and not gain wisdom. And I think about how much I've evolved. Like I thought I was a smart, well-read guy, but the last few years listening to so many good podcasts, I feel like I've upgraded my thinking and I've learned so much. There's so much knowledge out there, and it's most of it's, you know, it's almost all free, right?
Yeah.
So it's a crime not to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I agree. Out of all the things I do, this has to be one of the more profound things that I get to do. And although, you know, it's not a job per se in the sense of like, I remember one of my friend's dads, he would ask me, he's like, how's the podcast going? I'm like, it's good. And I'm still doing it. And he's like, are you making money? I'm like, no. He's like, it's not a job then. I'm like, oh, I treat it like a job, right? I try to deploy discipline and, you know, creating content and generating good, meaningful. I want to cultivate discussions and I want to stir people's curiosity. And I obviously want to, you know, put other people on, create a platform to share other people's stories, all that stuff. And you have to treat it like a job if you want to be consistent. Because how many people start something and don't, you know, see it through? What's
the statistic? I think if you get to 10 episodes, you're in the top 90%.
Oh, really?
I think 90% of people quit before episode number 10.
Yeah,
it's 95% by episode 40 or something.
This was arbitrary, but a friend told me not to judge myself until episode 50. And I'm close to like things that are ready to upload, close to 100.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, there's another Japanese expression. How you do something is how you do everything.
Yeah, how you do anything.
Yeah, how you do everything. Yeah. And I think that's a great, having the discipline to say I'm going to release one podcast every other week or whatever it is, whatever you say you're going to do, by sticking with it, there's something about knowing that your word means something, and it doesn't even have to be to anyone else but you. So if I tell myself I'm going to get some sprints in, and this happens to me all the time, for whatever reason my day gets away from me, I'll go out sometimes at 1 a.m. and I'll do it because I know that I can't go to bed without doing it, because then I know that my word doesn't mean anything to myself. And that doesn't happen too often, but occasionally it does. And I'm always like, motherfucker, why didn't I do this earlier? I feel like absolute shit and I'm really tired. The last thing I want to do.
You value it that much.
But yeah, because it's your word to yourself. So we can lie to the world, but we can't lie to ourselves.
I think it's easiest to lie to yourself.
Well, you can
because no one else needs, depending on who you are, right? But like no one else needs to know.
Well, I guess. But when you look in the mirror, Victor, at night, you know
like
the truth.
That shitty feeling.
Yeah, exactly. You know the truth. So that's one thing I would say is one of the best things that I've figured out with my experience in life is valuing your word. And it's not just if you like if I say I'm going to do something, I really try to do it. And I mean, of course, I had my Christmas party for my jiu-jitsu gym this Saturday, and I really wanted to go because I love those guys. And my wife and kid were sick, and I was real tired, and it was raining. And she says to me, she's like, baby, I think this is a sign, like, let's just not go. You know, my son was in bad way, so I didn't go. And I had that guilty feeling, like I planned to go, so I felt bad I wasn't going. So there's those things where it's just like, well, circumstances change, people are sick, there's things like that. But just having that mindset of when you say you're going to do something, you're going to figure out a way to do it, I think is very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And giving yourself grace like you guys did, because people are understanding, kids and each other, people get sick.
But like if you say to yourself though, you say, I don't know how, but I'm going to figure out how to grow my net worth X times in 5 years, or whatever it is.
Right.
And then that you're going to figure it out. You don't know how, but you're going to somehow figure out how to get there. I think that's a very powerful idea.
Yeah, I think that is along the same lines of manifesting, but having concrete goals to manifesting.
Yeah, because a lot of the time manifesting, people see it as, I'm going to go to bed and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be rich and famous. And then they don't do any work to get there, right? That's the negative of people focusing on the manifesting. It's like you have to manifest, and then you have to somehow change your daily habits to move you closer there.
I think it takes a level of self-awareness to identify how you're wired. So for me, I think it would weigh a little bit more heavily if I were to speak into this episode and identify what I want whatever goal, what I want my net worth to be, health-wise, money-wise, professional-wise, whatever it is, having the social accountability weighs more heavily on me.
So like if you tell people what you want to do, then you're going to feel good, positive pressure to do it.
That's a Tim Ferriss thing too. And if you want to take it to the next level, put a wager on it, right? And if you lose, I have to donate to your charity.
I like that. That's a Conor McGregor thing too. It's like,
really?
You're talking about being a champion before you even are, and you put it out there so much that you have to do the things every day to get there.
It's almost inevitable that you become it.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's so I use real estate as an example because it's my industry right now. So many people have, a couple of $1 million of sales a year, and they want to be a top agent, which I think is over 10 or somewhere around that number. And the best advice I can say is do the daily things and the weekly things that a top agent would do. So by acting that way, you're going to get there. But if you keep acting the way you're acting, you're always going to be a low producer.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's some
power in that. It does come to the daily habits and consistent daily habits.
Have you read Atomic Habits?
Not completely.
No. But the theme is very powerful. He says it's not about too many people write down goals, especially now we're recording this at the end of December. So I love January 1st. I think it's a really powerful day to set your intention for the year. So I'm a big believer in writing down goals. But a lot of people, whether they write them down or whether they think about what they want to do for the year, if they just do that, they get to, I think the number is you get to February and everyone forgets their New Year's resolutions. Whereas if you set your resolutions and then you figure out what you're doing on a daily and weekly schedule to get there,
I like that.
Then you'll get there. And that's his idea in the book is it's not the goals we set. The goals we set are good to kind of steer in the direction of the ship kind of thing, but it's the daily habits.
Well, how does one identify the daily habits?
Well, again, let's use my industry because it's easy. If I say I want to sell $50 million of real estate, that's about $4 million a month. That's about $1 million a week. That's two transactions. And I say, so I want to be talking to maybe 10 to 15 clients, hoping that out of those 15, 2 will end up getting to the closing table. So you're kind of working backwards, and then so that's at least having 2-3 conversations a day.
I like that.
with clients. So it's
those, working backwards, yeah.
Exactly. Or like the easiest thing to do is setting goals the right way. So we use jiu-jitsu as an example. If I say I want to win this tournament next year, and it doesn't matter how I can train really hard or I can train so-so. I could go against an absolute phenom who I could beat if I trained every day and I gave up my whole life and I just did jiu-jitsu. And then I say, well, I failed in my goal. But that's not a good metric because you can't control your opponent. But if I say, I want to do a minimum of 3 to 4 classes a week, sometimes 5 classes a week, and I'll give myself a couple of weeks off for injury and sickness, but I want to keep that schedule throughout the year. That's going to be 200 classes. I want to make 200 jiu-jitsu classes in a year. That's quantifiable.
I like
and
that.
Then you can so I think setting your goals in a way that you can be quantifiable, and it's not, so real estate's another example where I didn't achieve my goals this year because interest rates went up 2.5% from the low and everyone had a horrible year. So I'm not upset that I didn't make my goals because I can't control that environment, but I'm still happy with what I did achieve in a bad market because I did the correct daily and weekly habits. And I know that when the market shifts, I'll be back on track to where I want to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. When did you first come upon rewinding your goals or
Brother,
unwinding your goals?
I've been doing that for at least like 18, 19 years. It's been a long time. Yeah,
It's had a compounding effect.
Yeah, I think so, because but to talking about happiness and success being two very different things, I have this practice where I try and do it, and I have a friend, my shout out to my buddy Brad, who is my co-author on the book we're writing on real estate. We're hopefully going to release next month. We normally have a phone call on the first, unless we see each other in person, and we talk about what are your goals for the year. We keep each other accountable. But every time I do goals for the year, I always try to write down. I spend a bit of time trying to look at what I wrote the year before and see where I fell short. And was it because my goals changed, like the intentions that I had changed, or was it because I just fell short? Or did I exceed them? Maybe I exceeded them. And because too many times, and we use the entrepreneurship as an example, an entrepreneur's goals are going to expand as his success goes up. So if you're only looking forward and you're setting these really high goals and you don't spend time to look back, you forget how far you've come. So we'll use this year as an example. I fell way short of my goals in sales, but if my goals 4 years ago would have been so happy to have the sales I had even in a bad year.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
So I think by looking forward, that's going to be good for intentions and setting your habits for success. But by looking backwards, you can normally see how far you've come, and that's going to be much better for your happiness.
And you do that as well in December?
I normally January 1st. Yeah, December 31st, January 1st.
So all at the same time, setting intentions and then reflecting on the previous year.
Exactly, yeah. And a lot of people, they do it, and you should really every few months, I'm busy, like you're busy, we're juggling a lot of things, we're wearing a lot of different hats, so we forget. But I think going back every few months and just being like, hey, am I on track? Am I off track? Is there some things I should do? Because it's such a balance. Like I'm at the age now where I don't want to be working like I was in my 20s, and I have so much respect for people like Elon Musk, where he's got to be, I don't know, is he 50, early 50s?
At what cost? What do you think he had to sacrifice in order to do all this?
I think he's talked about, you don't want to be me, you don't want to be in my brain, because it just never turns off. But it's just his insane hours that he keeps is at the expense of his health. It's at the expense of his mental health, his physical health. I mean, he's giving
relationships.
Yes, exactly. He's giving everything to his craft.
Like some you've probably been told this many times. Like you're living the dream, Lawrence.
Thank you. That doesn't mean, it's funny because this is great advice. We were talking a bit before the show about the Almanac of Naval Ravikant's, and he said a wonderful thing. He said the idea of jealousy is so silly because someone could look at one aspect of someone else and say, God, I'm so jealous. I'm single and I can't meet a good girl, and he has such a wonderful relationship with his wife, and I'm jealous of that. But you can't pick and choose. So maybe you're jealous of the relationship, but everything else in his life is in disarray, and you're already happy with those aspects of your life. So he uses the example of that being jealousy is such a silly metric. But everyone, thank you for saying that, brother. But we all have our own problems.
I agree. I guess in the sense of I heard someone say comparison, is the thief of joy.
Yes.
He disagrees. He's like, instead of comparison, use the word envy, because I think it's important to be able to compare yourself to others, to kind of measure where you are and where you might want to be. And at the same time, you can be happy for that person, right? But when it starts becoming envy, you're envious of especially the tangible items that someone has, then there's that negative connotation to it.
That's such a great point, because comparison is not, it's the most natural thing, because we're social creatures.
Yes.
So if no one looks at themselves in a vacuum, you're always comparing yourself to others. And by comparing yourself in a healthy way, I think it's a good, so I can compare myself to some of my friends in finance. So when I was in my early 20s, made all this money from trading, I was the richest among all my friends. And now a lot of them are way ahead of me, because I've had a damn good time and I made a few mistakes, So that's actually that kind of comparison is good, because it's like one of my goals next year is to be a bit more fiscally responsible, not spend, like I went to Antarctica. That was a very, very expensive trip, and it probably wasn't the most fiscally responsible thing to do. But I was
asked you about that, because you ran a marathon, right?
Well, actually went to Antarctica twice.
Jeez.
And the first time, COVID broke out at the camp. So we were at the airport in South Africa, and we will go. This is when 2021. So it was when COVID was, people were a bit more worried about COVID. And they said, I'm so sorry, guys, the trip's canceled. And I was with some very wealthy. I was one of the youngest and the poorest. I was joking with Jen. I was like, we are by far in the wrong room here. There are all these guys.
Or the right room.
or the right room. But they said, yeah, sorry, it's the trip's canceled. And one of the CEOs who was there, he got on the phone with the owner of the company. He wasn't there. He was on a phone call, and he said no. He said, we've all had vaccinations. We don't care. We're going. We don't care. And the guy said, listen, I can lose my license to fly people out to Antarctica. You can't go. And he ended up negotiating. He said, well, we've got to fly a plane out there to drop off supplies. So you can't see anybody. But if you want, you can go on that flight. You're going to have 3 or 4 hours while we're offloading. And then we're reloading crap to take back to South Africa. And you can go for that. And you can go off and do a hike. So he said, okay. And they said, next year you come back and it's going to be, you've paid already, but you've got to make it back to South Africa. So I was really upset because I trained for a marathon there. That was the reason I was going. I was trying to do my 7th continent. So I took an edible on the plane, and we land, and I'm a little high, and we did a 3-hour hike, high the whole time, and we get back, and then we get back on the plane. I fall asleep. I fly home, and I was like telling Jen, I'm like, baby, I think I might be the only person that's only been to Antarctica high. That could be my distinction in life. And then we had to come back the next year. So the next year we came back and we had a week there, and it was so incredible because I went there for a marathon, but I felt like I got so much more. And that's kind of back to your point about being in a room, spending time with 2 couples, and they were incredibly uber wealthy people. So one of them was from Dubai, and he had a company of 15,000 employees, and he was just saying how he was so happy because he was finally disconnected. There was no service. No one could get hold of him. And he said, I can have peace for a week. And it's talking about that. So I would look at 2 of those guys. They were both older than me. They were just incredibly successful, both married, both, had successful personal lives. And in terms of professionally, they were just, uber successful. And to see them, it's so easy to look at people like that and think they don't have problems. And this guy, all he wants is peace. And how many of our friends do we know that might be complaining about everything, but they can easily shut their phone off for a day and the world's not going to end, So it's a good example of comparison is good, but envy is really bad, because anyone that we look up to and admire is dealing with demons and problems and stresses. And I think it's healthy to remember that, because it makes you feel okay with the things you're dealing with.
I think it's easy for us to put our heroes on a pedestal. People like, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, and just you don't think about what they've had to sacrifice to be the greatest.
That's another great point. Yeah, so many people, we want the fruits of their labor, but if we knew what it cost them to get there, there's no way we'd make that trade. Yeah.
So I mean, if you have a roof over your head and food on the table, you're doing better than most.
That's true. If you can afford a cup of coffee, they say you're in the top 1% of the population. So that's such a good reminder. And that's the gift of travel, is to see how many things we take for granted, and how what's that expression? These are first world problems. It's so true. And it doesn't mean that they're not still problems, because they are problems, but just having that perspective makes you so much, it's easier to be happier when you realize that people would kill for your problems.
Well, I'm curious, how many decisions are we away from being in a similar situation as those that are unfortunate?
As a society, you mean, or on a personal level?
On a personal level. Like, I wonder how many of us, how many decisions away am I from being homeless?
Yeah, that's a great point. Things tend to spiral pretty quickly. And I mean, I've had some podcast episodes with people that were multimillionaires, and they went all the way down to pretty much homeless. And it's incredible.
Depending on how you got to where you got, most entrepreneurs say you can take away my money and business, but the skills and the character and the discipline that I've cultivated, I can build something else, right? So it really depends on how that millionaire got to becoming a millionaire.
There's a great book called Mistakes Millionaires Make, and one of my good friends got it for me when he knew that I became very, very wealthy through trading, and then I pretty much lost and squandered all of it. And he gave me this book, and it was so refreshing, because it was talking about people who achieved way more success than me, and then they lost everything. And a lot of them were married with kids, and then their wife would leave them and take their kids away, and they were just heartbreaking stories, Victor. And the theme of the book was kind of coming back to that. A lot of them just had this one revenue stream, whether it was they were a business, some kind of company. And then when, for whatever reason, whether it was bad luck or bad management or, nefarious means from different partners and things like that, they lost everything because it was only one stream. They ended up losing everything. And a lot of, this is not to knock on women, but a lot of relationships I'd have, these people would be like, oh, if you lost everything when I was doing well financially, if you lost everything, I'd still be there for you. And that's such a silly expression, because I'm not going to be, if I had $1 million in my bank account and then I had a partner that screwed me over and he stole all my money, and I wake up the next day and I've got zero there and I can't even pay my bill next month, my mortgage bill, I'm not going to be the same person. I'm going to be, to some extent, broken. I can come back from it, but I'm going to be somewhat broken mentally. I'm not going to be in a nice, good mood when I wake up in the morning. So it's circumstances change you. You can come back from it, but you're not going to be the same person. It's not like you're this person and you have all this wealth and success, and then suddenly all the wealth and success is ripped from you, and you're the same person. Like, oh, I'll just build it back. Yeah. It takes time.
Yeah, it's situational. It could be traumatic. And so it can change you.
That book, it was just, the theme was every one of the families, they were like, yep, I'm out of here when you lose everything. And it was actually really sad. And I think we're very lucky. We both have very good wives and very good relationships. And that the best, what do they say, Victor, for happiness? The best two decisions are who your life partner is, and what your occupation is. And I think so that there's a thing now, it seems like there's more and more people that want love, and for whatever reason, dating seems so hard right now. They just can't find love.
I mean, that just boils down to communication. Communication, vulnerability, and your willingness to do both. Your willingness to, on our first date with Justine, she opened up about her 7-year relationship that ended in infidelity. They were engaged, right? And I admired her ability to be that vulnerable on date 1, right? And it was a sign. It was a sign of like, if she goes this deep on date 1, I can't imagine, right? And I don't know. I don't know if people are willing to do that. And I think it's okay to go through a hoe phase, right? If that's what you want to do, just don't lie to yourself, right? Don't lie to other people. Share your intentions, and that's where pain comes from. Is when expectations are not met. When one person thinks they're in it to get married, and the other's like just doing it as a fling.
But the idea of vulnerability, that's the same as putting yourself out there. A lot of people, what are the statistics with young people? There's like a huge section of the population in the dating age that hasn't asked out anyone for a year or something. There's some statistic like that, where people are not putting themselves out there because they don't even want to be vulnerable to rejection.
Yeah, Robert Greene recently said, the clip was recent, but vulnerability is the Latin root word of wound, and to me, Justine and I met online, right? So like that takes a level of vulnerability, because there are plenty of people that refuse to go on the online dating apps because of what they've heard or what they've experienced. And yeah, to be honest, there's a lot of mud out there. But it's your, how bad do you want it? And it's leaving no stone unturned, including potentially things that are not ideal, right? Some people still have this traditional romantic view of like, I need to bump into someone at a coffee shop and we're gonna strike a conversation, and or maybe too reliant on a coworker, meeting someone at work. I guess with the times, like the dating apps are working for many people. As a wedding photographer, a lot of the couples that I shoot met on Tinder, actually. Out of all the dating apps, like Tinder. Yeah.
But I think if you use the apps wisely, the apps are just a way of getting a person in front of you so you can talk and see if you're a good match.
It could be ruthless too. It's like, in the sense of, it could be a game, right? Perceptions. It's like social media. It's a quick snapshot of how you want to be portrayed and perceived by a potential soulmate, right? Potential life partner. And you have to put your best foot forward. You have to have quality photos with friends, photos with a dog. Justine was like, oh, he has 2 dogs. And I'm like, her friends are like, but who is he? So yeah, and you have to be witty and charming, and you have to do that very fast. But if both people have the same intentions, the same goals, same values, and you can find someone in any way. It doesn't have to be online, in any way, right?
But I'll say this: how many people who are like, you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs? How hard are these people working to build businesses? They invest so many hours a week.
You know who Jen Diaz comes to mind.
Yes, how hard she works.
Oh God!
So think about that, and then think about how many people that put almost no effort into meeting somebody and then complain they haven't met somebody. It's like, listen, you've got to go. You've got to go on a lot of bad dates. You've got to have some flings that don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You've got to like, even if you say, listen, I don't want to do the dating apps. I want to meet someone in real life. Well, then you got to spend a couple of hours going to coffee shops and going to grocery stores and talking to attractive people that you're attracted to, and making the effort. Because a lot of people they want it just to fall in their hand. And I've seen this a lot in business where people can be incredible with one aspect of their life. So that'll be the entrepreneurial aspect, but they won't really invest any time in the relationship. And then they're wondering why they're not meeting good people.
Well, vulnerability and communication is like a muscle, right? Just like being an entrepreneur. And if you're not working on it, it's withering away. Similar to whatever it is, whether it's podcasting, if you notice, like you take a break from podcasting, you come back, you're like, how do I do an introduction again? Like, how do I, momentum will be in your favor. So it's like consistency and keep going at it, and it'll get easier over time. Similar to like, how to take a rejection, how to take a no. The no's get softer every time.
You got to keep putting yourself out there. And all the statistics show that we don't regret failure. We regret things we didn't try. And that's the perfect example. Yeah. The dating example. Brother, I could talk to you all night. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. And I didn't say in the beginning, but this wouldn't be, possible without you. This space, this podcast space, EMT class, and to be honest, like it could be a multi-purpose space. Like it could be a yoga class in the front. Lawrence, I'm only here twice a week if I'm not podcasting. What else? Like concealed carry class? Like it could be anything. Paint and sip class? Like anything you want. Any type of seminar class. I got tables and chairs. If anyone's listening, like you need space, like we got space.
It's a beautiful place in Pilsen. Yeah, that's how Victor and I met. We have a mutual friend who messaged me, said, hey, I got a friend who's looking for a place in Pilsen, and we found this rental. I was
this close to signing a contract previous to that.
I'm really glad we met. And that's another thing about putting yourself out there, is just doing things and being active in life. You get to meet wonderful people. And that's what keeps, for me, that's what keeps life interesting. It's just the people
out of
you
all
meet.
the things, that's got to be one of my favorites.
Likewise, brother. Such a pleasure. We'll do part 2 soon.
Oh, thanks. I love
you, brother.
The idea, I love you back.
That was definitely not 45 minutes.